Just 38 days to go to the election. Then later on, we'll be telling you what is happening beyond your borders with international news. Many thanks for joining us or staying with us here on KTN News Desk. First, the highlights. NASA now claims security detail for some IEBC commissioners withdrawn as the fallout continues within the electoral body. NASA heads to Ukambani while Jubilee reaches out to Kericho with just 38 days to the presidential election. Foul play suspected as property worth millions of shillings belonging to the county government goes up in flames. And CCTV footage reveal how a bogus witch doctor stage managed the fake car theft nudity drama that left Mombasa talking. Good afternoon. NASA has suffered a major blow after its fifth principal, Isaac Ruto, joined the Jubilee Party at a rally in Kapkatet, Kericho. Ruto has been conspicuously absent from NASA events since he lost the Bomet gubernatorial race to Dr. Joyce Laboso. We'll bring you those images as soon as we can. And our reporter, Victor Ogale, is on the ground. He will be giving us more details about that rally in Kapkatet, Kericho. Let's quickly get back to the conversation. I want initial reactions. Isaac Ruto joining Jubilee. Does it have any implications for NASA?
Akisa, this question can be answered by tracing the events that took place before the elections and on the day of the elections and after the elections were announced. To me, if someone asked me whether the crossover of Isaac Ruto will be of any impact to NASA. From a political standpoint and in terms of the members, in terms of supporting NASA, I think he brings, or that is of no consequence in terms of affecting the numbers. Because you look at even the votes that he got in terms of the governorship, and you also try to relate that with what the presidential candidate of NASA got in Bomet, I'll say the crossover is of no effect at all. And it's a similar situation when you are comparing it to someone like Peter Munya. These are people who actually cannot withstand the pressure of being on the other side. So to me, I think his crossover is of no consequence. It's a similar, and it can be equated to the biblical fellas who went back to Egypt. And this is a reaction that is always seen all over. Whenever there is that agitation for redemption, there are people who will always not be sure. So to me, I think his crossover or going back is of no consequence. In fact, he is going to be held with little regard other than or compared to what he was held before.
Mark, do you agree?
You know, this whole conversation about Ababu, Ruto, Munya, you know, let me ask a question. Typically, when you remember when we used to do debate and we used to cross the floor, and crossing the floor meant that I now agree with your arguments, I agree with your way of thinking, I agree with your belief system. Now the question is, these defections, what new beliefs have you accepted other than you were defeated in an election? The reality of the matter is this: yes, political movements do affect perception. Yes, political movements will affect the campaign machinery on the ground. That is obvious. However, on both sides, I am sick and tired of a country where we defect for personal gain, not from conviction. You are supposed to move from political party to political party because you now believe in the ethos, in the ideas, in the direction, in the manifesto of this new party. It is not a movement of personalities.
But hasn't it been established that we don't have ideals in parties in this country?
And that's the reason why we should be having these conversations in platforms such as this. Defection is not about how many votes I'm coming with. Defections are about what is the ideology I believe in. That is the question. You see, if today I defected from Dini Munyam Sambua, which is very popular from where I come from, okay, and joined Christianity, I have to say that I now believe in Christianity being the higher sense of reasoning. And that is what must happen. We just don't keep moving, because the problem is we keep confusing Kenyans. People thought that the Rutos were mortal enemies. Okay? People are almost coming to blows because of them. But the two of them are friends. So Kenyans need to understand that NASA and Jubilee are friends. Do you know why they're friends? They have the same salaries in Parliament, same salaries in Senate. We are the ones who are not there. So we need to understand that this is about ideologies, not people.
All right.
Yeah,
yes.
And maybe to add, I think in terms of the moral aspect, the political moral aspect that surrounds the whole defection, I think Isaac Ruto's move is the most immoral in the recent political times, because even if you're staging a defection, you have to wait for the waters to cool. You have to wait for the tide to come down, because it shouldn't just be instantaneous. Because when you defect at the heat of the moment, what you are confirming is that you should feel ashamed and feel little and sit down. That is what I think.
Would you describe Munya's defection as like that as well?
Munya's defection, I think, it's based on trying to redeem himself and try to flex himself, because he has actually come to terms that he's alone, and he's trying to find some relevance.
Isn't that the same thing Isaac Ruto is doing? Why are we judging them differently?
It's a cut and paste
thing.
thing.
It's the same thing.
Yes.
And that's what I'm saying. Yeah. It is the same thing. People are moving for selfish interests.
Yes.
They're not moving because they care about the manifestos and the plans that this particular political parties have. And this is the problem. So the movement, will it affect the election? Yes, it will, because it affects your machinery as a party on the ground. The defections by Luya politicians to Jubilee will affect. The election of Lusaka as speaker will affect the election. That is for sure. Should it affect the question? That is another question. It shouldn't, because the ideals and the morals have not changed. If Lusaka was to tell us today that he will not procure wheelbarrows for Senate again, then I would believe him that this is a changed man. And that's what we need in Kenyan politics.
You mentioned Ken Lusaka. There has been a conversation that has been blowing up the social media. Being elected as Senate Speaker, and the first order of business for you is campaigns. Do you think this is demeaning that particular position as a Senate Speaker in the country? Because previously we haven't seen outright campaigns from speakers like that.
I think it's, to a greater extent, it's actually belittling that office. But from a political end, in terms of where he sits, he has no choice but to follow his masters, because you remember the manner in which he was appointed. The president did say that we want Ken Lusaka, and that was it. He actually whipped his supporters, that is the MPs and the senators on the Jubilee side, and they tore that line. So as to whether Ken Lusaka has his own choice, he has none. He has to toe the line. Otherwise, he will be bundled out the same way Ekwe Othuro was bundled. So because you remember, Ekwe Othuro was bundled out because it was perceived that he didn't go out there looking for votes. So I think Ken Lusaka doesn't want that time to come when he will be told, you know what, you didn't look for the votes when we were hunting, so you were out.
Mark, for you, where do you think this leaves such seats and such positions? How do we expect them to behave once they start sittings?
In the order of power in Kenya, you start with the president, his deputy, and then the Speaker of the National Assembly. That tells you how highly the Constitution looks at these particular offices. These are state officers, all right? Their approach should be state first, then party second. That is what should happen. But to answer your question, I'd like you to imagine for 1 second that the speaker you've chosen is now the president of the republic. Then ask, did we make the right choice? That is the question for Kenyans. Because we need to understand that when we appoint a chief justice, we are appointing the face of the nation. When we appoint a speaker, we are appointing a face of the nation. When we appoint a chair of IEBC nation, when we appoint chair of the watchdog committee of integrity and hate speech and things like that, we are electing someone who should put state above political allegiance. This is the standards that we need to bring back into our country. I don't think it's a good thing for him to go into campaign mode, but is it an effective campaign tool? Definitely. Because you'll go back there and say, see, this is what you can get.
Titus says he has no choice. But let's quickly take a look at a story before we get back into the conversation. Youth in Homa Bay have launched a sensitization program in a bid to see NASA leader Raila Odinga clinch the presidency come October the 17th. The bid saw the youth get into vehicles and walk the streets of Homa Bay town, calling on residents to turn out in large numbers and vote for Raila Odinga. The program that had its debut in Homa Bay town is spearheaded by the ODM chairperson, Gladys Wanga, among other leaders. The same will be replicated in different regions in Nyanza with the aim of solidifying Raila's votes.